Welcome to Dark Feed, where once you find the feed, it finds you. It was supposed to be a dream vacation, the kind you take pictures of, the kind you plan for months, the kind that brings families closer together. But for the Bradley family, the cruise they boarded in March 1998 would never make it to the scrapbook. Because by the time the ship returned to port, they were one person short, and no one, not even the ship's cameras, could explain how Amy Lynn Bradley disappeared. She was 23, recent college graduate, athletic, independent, smart with a dry wit and a strong will. She had her whole life ahead of her, and she was in no rush to waste it. Amy wasn't the type to vanish. She wasn't depressed. She wasn't impulsive. She didn't have a reason to run. But sometimes that doesn't matter. Sometimes the dark doesn't care what kind of person you are. It was March 21st, 1998, when Amy, her parents Ron and Iva, and her younger brother Brad boarded the Rhapsody of the Seas, a Royal Caribbean cruise ship bound for the Caribbean. They departed from San Juan, Puerto Rico, headed for Aruba and Curacao. Amy had been hesitant about the trip. She didn't like open water, didn't like the idea of being trapped on a floating city with strangers. But she agreed for her family, because that's the kind of person she was. For the first few days, everything seemed fine. The family took photos, ate together, laughed, danced. Amy even made friends with the ship's band, a reggae group called Blue Orchid. She and her brother Brad hung out with them into the early hours. But Amy also mentioned something strange to her parents. She said the ship's crew, some of them at least, made her uncomfortable. Too many eyes on her, too many looks that lingered. Iva, her mother, brushed it off at first. She didn't want to ruin the trip with paranoia. But later, she'd remember that comment like it was a scream. The night of March 23rd would be the last time anyone saw Amy. Officially. The family had attended the captain's gala and gone dancing afterward. Amy and Brad stayed out longer. They were seen at the ship's nightclub with members of Blue Orchid. Photos show Amy smiling, drink in hand. At around 1 a.m., Amy and Brad returned to their cabin. They stepped out onto the balcony for a smoke, then went to bed. Amy was awake again around 5:15 a.m. Her father, Ron, briefly saw her on the balcony. She was reading a magazine and told him she couldn't sleep. He went back to bed. By 6 a.m., she was gone. Not just gone from the room, gone from the ship. No one saw her leave. There were no alerts, no cameras catching her falling overboard.
No witnesses, no screams, no splash.
Just silence. Ron searched every deck, the dining room, the pool, the lounges.
No Amy.
The ship docked in Curacao that morning. The family begged the staff not to let passengers disembark, not until they searched the ship thoroughly. They were ignored. People got off. If Amy had been taken, if someone had forced her off that ship, the window was wide open. Royal Caribbean claimed to have done a full search, but they didn't call the Coast Guard until hours later. And even then, they seemed more concerned with protecting their image than finding a missing woman. They suggested Amy must have fallen overboard. But Amy was a trained lifeguard, strong swimmer, no sign of a fall, no body, no clothes in the water,
no debris.
And then something strange surfaced. A Canadian passenger came forward. He said he saw Amy that morning after 6 a.m. She was in the elevator with a crew member, and she didn't look comfortable. Then more came in. Other passengers said they'd seen Amy walking around the ship that morning, alone, near the pool deck. But none of those sightings were confirmed by ship security. None of them were caught on camera. And then came the kicker. The ship's dance band, Blue Orchid, the group Amy and Brad had hung out with, they were suddenly quiet. All except one member, Yellow, the bass player. He was the last known person to be seen with Amy, and he changed his story multiple times. At first, he said they talked and parted ways at the club. Later, he said they walked together, that she went into the elevator alone, that maybe she was headed back to her room. But then another passenger saw something else. Amy and Yellow were seen walking together on the upper deck. Around 5:30 a.m., just before she vanished. The ship staff did not question Yellow extensively. In fact, Royal Caribbean flew the band home early, before the investigation was even fully underway. Why? They never gave a clear answer. And Yellow? He refused to cooperate further. The Bradleys were stuck. The ship was no help. The authorities were slow. And Amy, their daughter, their sister, had vanished into the sea or into the air.
No clues.
No body.
No screams.
Just an empty balcony and silence. But this story doesn't end there. It doesn't stay on the ship. Because in the months and years that followed, people kept seeing Amy. And what they saw was horrifying. Some disappearances end in grief. Some in closure. Some fade into quiet, unanswered cold cases. But Amy Lynn Bradley's case never faded. It evolved, twisted, because in the years after she vanished from the rhapsody of the seas, Amy kept being seen, in places she never should have been, with people who never should have known her, and sometimes in photographs that should never have existed. Started slowly, a phone call here, a blurry sighting there, enough to stir hope and dread in equal measure. But then came the photo. Let's back up. After Amy disappeared on March 24, 1998, the FBI got involved. They ruled out suicide, ruled out accidental drowning. They believed, like Amy's family did, that she'd been taken. But by who and why? That's when the sightings began. The first came in August 1998, just 5 months after Amy vanished. A Canadian man and his wife were vacationing in Curacao, the island the cruise ship had docked at the morning Amy went missing. They were at the beach when the man noticed a group of people, and among them, a woman who caught his attention. She had tattoos that matched Amy's. A Tasmanian devil spinning a basketball on her shoulder, a sun on her lower back, a gecko on her stomach, a Chinese symbol on her right ankle. But it wasn't just the tattoos. He said the woman looked terrified, like she wanted to speak, but couldn't, like someone was watching her. He later told police, "She tried to get my attention with her eyes, but there were 2 men. I think they were controlling her." By the time he called authorities, the group was gone. Then came a sighting in Caracas, Venezuela, over a year later. A U.S. Navy sailor walked into a brothel, and a woman pulled him aside. She told him, "My name is Amy Bradley. Please help me." Before he could react, 2 men dragged her away. He didn't report it immediately. When he did, and investigators returned to the location, the brothel had been burned down. No records.
No trace.
Nothing left. But the most disturbing piece of evidence came in 2005. 7 years after Amy vanished. Her parents, Ron and Iva, received an anonymous email from someone who ran an adult website. Attached was a single photograph. It showed a woman lying on a bed, eyes heavy, face blank, wearing lingerie, staring through the screen like she'd forgotten what freedom looked like. The website owner claimed the woman went by the name Jazz. Amy's parents were stunned. They believed it was her. Older, changed, haunted, but her. The FBI examined the photo. Several forensic analysts agreed. The woman matched Amy's physical profile. Same facial structure, same ears, same tattoos. Strategically blurred but still visible. The photo was traced to a site known for trafficking. It was pulled offline, but by then the damage was done. And Amy? Still missing. For Amy's parents, the photo was proof of their worst fear, that Amy hadn't died. She'd been sold into what many believe was a trafficking ring, possibly operating from the ship through Caribbean ports and into South America. And Amy? She may have been alive the entire time. That theory was backed up by former FBI agent Harold Kopis, who publicly stated, "There's no doubt in my mind she was targeted. She didn't fall. She didn't jump. She was taken. Period." But who would do it? Who could smuggle a grown woman off a massive cruise ship without anyone noticing? The answer may lie in the crew. Amy had told her parents she felt uncomfortable around certain staff. One in particular, a waiter, had taken a keen interest in her. He'd asked her to go into town with him when the ship docked. She declined. He persisted. After her disappearance, that same waiter approached the Bradleys, unaware that Amy was already missing, and said, "I'm sorry to hear Amy didn't make it to breakfast. She was talking about going into Curacao." That comment hit hard. No one had publicly announced Amy was missing yet, and she'd never told him she planned to go into town. Why would he say that? What did he know? The cruise line never followed up. Royal Caribbean insisted they had conducted a full investigation, but their actions tell a different story. They cleaned the cabin before the FBI could search it. They flew the band home without questioning them. They refused to release surveillance footage to the Bradleys, and to this day they deny any negligence. Meanwhile, Amy's family never stopped searching. They traveled to Curacao, passed out flyers, offered a $250,000 reward. They met locals who claimed to have seen Amy, sometimes just days earlier. One bartender said he'd seen a woman matching her description, with two men always watching her. One taxi driver said he picked her up, and she begged him to drive faster. But the men caught up. Every time the Bradleys got close, she was gone again. Over the years, tips kept coming. A woman saw her in a shopping mall, another in a bar bathroom. One claimed she whispered, "My name is Amy," before being pulled away. Some were hoaxes, but too many had details only the family would know. Tattoo placements, birthmarks, facial expressions. Was Amy alive and being moved from place to place? Was she watching the headlines, unable to speak, afraid of retaliation? Was she still hoping someone would find her? The sightings tapered off after 2010. The photo from the adult site was the last major development. Amy would be in her late 40s now. If she's alive, she's been gone longer than she lived free. There's one more piece of the story. In 2010, a woman named Judy Maurer, working with a missionary group, said she met a woman in a Barbados restroom. She was with two men clearly controlling her. When the men left briefly, the woman leaned in close and said, "My name is Amy. I'm from Virginia. Please help me." But Judy was stunned, confused. By the time she processed what was happening, the woman was gone. She reported it. The FBI followed up, but there was nothing to find. Again, Amy Lynn Bradley didn't vanish. She was erased, piece by piece, site by site, photo by photo, until only questions remained. And a single horrifying possibility. She may have been alive this whole time, and no one could save her. By the time most missing persons cases go cold, the world has already moved on. The photos yellow. The news coverage fades. People assume the worst. But in the case of Amy Lynn Bradley, the worst was never assumed, it was witnessed. Because people kept seeing her. In the background, in bathrooms, on beaches, in nightmares. And if even one of those sightings was real, then Amy didn't vanish. She was taken, held, moved, hidden in plain sight. For a while, the case became legend. Whispers in travel forums. Articles buried in the back corners of the internet. Conversations among ex-Navy, expats, ex-traffickers. People who say, "I heard she was trafficked. They moved her through the islands. She was meant to disappear. And worst of all, she didn't die. She just stopped existing." Let's rewind to the Rhapsody of the Seas. A floating city with over 2,000 people on board. Multiple decks. Security staff.
Surveillance caméra.
And yet, not a single image of Amy leaving that ship. Not even a blur.
No exit logs.
No reports of her being escorted.
No alarm triggered.
The only clue was silence, and that silence speaks volumes. Many believe Amy was the target of a prearranged trafficking ring. And the ship? The perfect setting. Dozens of crew members from foreign ports. Loose security on the lower decks. Limited cooperation from cruise lines. And ports like Curacao, known even then for being vulnerable to organized crime and human trafficking. Amy had tattoos, 4 of them, that made her identifiable, unique, and in the eyes of a trafficker, marketable. It also meant she'd be easy to track. But maybe someone didn't want her to be tracked. According to former FBI agent Harold Copus, there were enough red flags on that ship to raise the Titanic. But nothing was done. Not by the cruise line. Not by local authorities. Nobody. The crew may have looked the other way, or worse, been involved, especially when you consider the speed with which the band was flown home, or how Amy's cabin was cleaned before forensic teams arrived, or how no CCTV footage of her final hours was ever made public. It's almost as if the ship itself wanted to forget her. But there are places that remember, places like Curacao, a small Caribbean island, once ruled by colonial powers, now home to quiet tourism and underground economies. The kind of place where things are said softly and people disappear permanently. One source, a private investigator hired by the Bradley family, claimed to have traced a woman matching Amy's description through a series of underground sex clubs. In one, she was known as Jazz. In another, Bella. In a third, she had no name, just a room and handlers. But the trail always ended the same way. Silence, threats, fire, and vanishing. One brothel that allegedly housed her was burned to the ground. No records left. No survivors willing to speak. It's the kind of destruction you don't see unless someone's protecting the secret. Another tip came from a former U.S. Army intelligence officer who claimed that Amy was part of a list of Western women trafficked through Caribbean ports for use in high-end sex trades. He said her name had been seen in documents seized during a raid in Colombia and then scrubbed. When asked how he knew, he simply said, "Some people are too valuable to let go and too dangerous to be found." Years passed, but the sightings didn't stop. In 2010, on the island of Barbados, a woman fitting Amy's description was seen being escorted into a government building by 2 men. She was described as Caucasian, in her 30s, tattoos matching Amy's, seemingly in distress but silent. The witness reported it. But by the time investigators arrived, the building's security footage had been wiped. The men were gone, and so was she, again. So what really happened to Amy? There are 3 dominant theories. Let's break them down. Theory 1. She fell overboard. Royal Caribbean's original claim. But no splash heard. No body recovered. She was a trained swimmer, and multiple witnesses saw her alive that morning. This theory only serves the cruise line's liability. It doesn't answer any questions. Theory 2. Suicide. Some have suggested she jumped, that she was depressed. But Amy had no history of mental illness. She just accepted a new job. She was planning her life after college. She was excited about her future. And again, no body, no note, no clues. Theory 3. Human trafficking. This is the theory the family, the FBI, and most investigators believe. It explains the sightings, the photo, the brothel statement, the burned evidence, the consistent tattoos, and the look in her eyes. Amy Lynn Bradley didn't jump. She was taken by people who had done it before and who knew how to make someone vanish. If this is true, it's not just a tragedy. It's a cover-up and a warning, because cruise ships still operate today under the same conditions. Loopholes, unregulated waters, flags of convenience, minimal law enforcement. Every year, more people disappear from cruise ships, and most are never found. Amy's parents, Ron and Iva, never gave up. They appeared on America's Most Wanted, Dr. Phil, The Montel Williams Show. Anywhere someone might be watching, they offered a $250,000 reward. They followed every lead, chased down every rumor, faced every heartbreak, all for a glimpse of their daughter, or for closure they never received. Amy would be 49 years old today. If she's alive, she's been gone longer than she lived free. Her room back home still has her childhood things, photos frozen in time, a closet full of clothes she never returned to wear. And every year on March 24th, her family mourns the day she vanished, but not the girl, because they still believe she's out there. Maybe she is. Maybe one day someone will recognize her, see the tattoos, notice the fear behind her smile, and help. Or maybe she's watching this video right now on a phone someone else controls, afraid to speak, but listening, waiting for a signal. Amy, if you're out there, we haven't forgotten. Your name isn't buried, your face isn't erased, and your story isn't over. We see you, even in the dark.